You can put the scripture, the Luke, back up. If you see by the sermon title today, and I'm going to try to get to a point where I don't get echoes. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but I want to talk about the idea of what we've learned. Somebody's been to a walk to Emmaus in here, haven't they? Okay, anybody else? We got to do some recruiting. But on the walk to Emmaus, which is a weekend retreat, a weekend encounter with Christ is what it is. And on this weekend, one of the things they talk about is the fact that what we need to do as far as Christians is we need to be a friend, and we need to make a friend, and then we need to bring a friend to Christ. And in that order. We need to be a friend, to reach out to people and be a friend first. And then after you're a friend, then you make a friend, and then you bring a friend to Christ. And I want to show you in the scripture we just read from Luke how that happened and how Christ went about that. So I'm going to ask you to look at the screen and follow with me as we try to go through this. And maybe you can help me with some of this along the way. Now, it talks about now that same day. This is a reference to the fact the same day this is the day of resurrection, all right? This is when Christ was raised, so you know where we're talking about from this, all right? So the same day, two of them, and we know from the scripture later that, do you remember what the name of the one was? Yeah, Cleophas, okay, and the friend. Don't know who the other person was. So it's there. So on the same day, they're going to a village of Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Now, they have just been through some special times in Jerusalem. What was the high holy day that these men, we assume it's a man, it could be a man and a woman, Cleophas and a woman. What's the special time in a Jew's life that they just went through? Passover, right? Yeah, and now these are not apostles, it says disciples. So in other words, they were not the inner 12, but they were some of the others that followed and followed with Jesus. But they've gone through a special time for them. This special time that has been going on for roughly how long at this point in time? Do you remember? How long they've been doing this in Jesus' day? About 1,500 years. Okay, that they've been celebrating the Exodus and what the Passover time. Remember when the death angel passed over when they were in Egypt. And so they were talking, and these men are going along, and they're on their way to Emmaus. Emmaus is 7 miles. How long is it going to take you if you're talking with a friend and you're talking about some significant things to walk 7 miles? How long? 2.5 to 3 hours. If you're talking with somebody, I'm going to say it's going to take you half a day. If you're moving along, I can move along fast, and in an hour, I can get 3 miles. And that's a fast-paced walk. That's not running or jogging. That's a fast-paced walk. So I'm going to say you're going to take a half a day to a day to go. Because when you're talking with somebody over something important for the both of you, are you walking like this? Or are you just walking along and talking? We'd call it saunder, okay? You're just kind of sauntering along. You're not in a rush. You're going to get there. But what you're talking about is more important than the place you're going to. So they're on their way to Emmaus. It's going to take them a while to get there. And it says they were talking with each other about everything that happened that day, or everything that had happened. Now I'm going to say that what they were talking about is everything that happened starting the Sunday before the crucifixion and before the resurrection, which would be Palm Sunday, right? That's Sunday. And then everything that went on during the week, the time that Jesus was taken and hung on the cross, and his trial and that whole thing. And then the resurrection, which they have some questions about. Let's go to the next one, if you would, for me, Dave. So as they talked and discussed these things with each other. Now, so they're talking back and forth. They're walking along, sauntering along, okay? And it says, and Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. Now, how did Jesus get there? We know this is after the resurrection, right? Did he jog up to him? How did he get to him? Think about it. How did he get to the disciples when they were inside the locked room? We don't know like that. All we know is God is the creator of everything, time and space included. And if Jesus wants to be here now, where will he be? Right here, right now. So Jesus goes and comes up to them. All right? And it says, and they were kept from recognizing him. Now, these are disciples. They've seen Jesus. They've watched him. They've heard him preach. They know who Jesus is. They were kept from recognizing him. I say to you that my guess is part of the reason they couldn't recognize him is because of the tears in their eyes. You ever try to sing a song and look at the words when you got tears in your eyes? You can't see the words. You can't see the notes. And I'm certain as they go through what's happened the last 2 weeks, they are just feeling overwhelmed, and I'm certain there's tears in their eyes, because who did they think Jesus was? The Messiah, the one that's going to kick Rome out, right? The one that's going to lead them to the new kingdom, all right? And just going to be the head one. And all of a sudden, all their hopes that they put on Jesus, what happened to them? Don't come up, kids. That wasn't about. They've been stomped on. They've been smashed, right? Jesus was dead. They crucified him. They saw it. They heard about it. He's gone. Wow, what happened? We had all these great plans along the way. All right, so, and then it says, he asked them. Now, here's the thing. Be a friend, all right? Jesus goes up to them and asks, what are you discussing together as you walk along? And they stood still. They stopped, and their faces are in despair. All right? And they're kind of thinking, what? All right? And hit the next part of it. One of them, named Cleophas, asked him, are you the only visitor in Jerusalem and do not know the things that have happened there in these days? Where are you dense? Where you been for the last week and a half? If you've been in Jerusalem, do you not understand what's happened? Everybody knows what's happening. So Jesus comes up to him. How do you get to know a person? What's the best way to get to know a person? Say it a little louder, will you? Listen, okay? And the best way to get to know a person is to ask them about who? Themselves. Yeah. What do you think? What do you like? You know, this type of thing. You find out about themselves. Jesus comes up to these men and says, what things? All right? He asked. So Jesus, what things? What are you talking about? What's all this stuff that's happened? So again, he's playing ignorant, all right? Tell me what things. Because what's the other thing what does Jesus want to know? What's the other thing that Jesus wants to know? Think about it.
He wants to know what they're thinking.
Yes, he wants to know, what are they thinking? What's their interpretation of what happened, right? They're a disciple. What do you think happened? What went along on this? So he says, tell me. Again, I want to be a friend, all right? So tell me. Talk to me. What do you think about it? All right, let's go to the next one. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. Next verse. But we had hoped that he was the one, the Messiah, who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it's the third day since all this took place. And remember, Jesus said what was going to happen on the third day. What was the thing that he said would happen? What happened to the temple if it got crushed? It would be rebuilt in 3 days. If they understood any scripture at all, they might understand this. So, why was it third day? I don't know. I don't know if that was a reference to Old Testament or not. So we go on. In addition, some of the women amazed us, as women usually do. And they went to the tomb early in the morning, all right? Early in the morning, that day, they went down to the tomb. But they didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Now, they say they saw a vision of angels, right? They didn't see angels. So this is their interpretation of what happened there. And then some of our companions, who was that? Do you know? Thank you. Peter and John decided that they would go to the tomb and found it just as the woman had said, but him, and who's the him? Jesus, all right, they did not see. Okay. Now, Jesus just heard, and I'm sure that was abbreviated, okay, heard them discuss as they're walking along, again, sauntering along, what had happened. He played ignorance. Tell me about it. And he got their interpretation of what happened along the way. Okay? So he's been being a friend. Tell me about yourself. Explain to me what, in this case, what's your theology? What's your hopes? What's your dreams and spiritual things? And they laid it right out there for him. Boy, our dreams were devastated. And then he said to him, this is Jesus, all right, how foolish you are and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. So how foolish you are and how slow of heart. In other words, you're not getting it, guys, okay? Slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Not that they spoke wrong, but it's there. You're just not getting it. So, be a friend. Now Jesus is going to make a friend. You've shared with me your concerns, right? You've shared with me the depth of your sorrow and maybe anger and all that's going on in this. And Jesus said, okay, now let me share with you and help. So let's go to the next verse. Now Jesus starts interpreting properly what they had heard and expanding on their thoughts. Did not the Christ have to suffer these things and then enter glory? So he's taking them back. Remember, disciples, were these guys good Christians? No. They're not good Christians. What are they? They're good Jews.
They've been Christ's disciples. Many have been Christians.
They're good Jews. They're still good Jews. They don't even know for sure who Christ is yet. Okay? Remember, their eyes are covered. So, they're good Jews. Good Jews. Are they trained well in the synagogue and in the temple? Did they know New Testament really well? You guys are good. Of course not. It hasn't been written yet. Okay? Did they know Old Testament real well? Yeah, they sure did. It was the man's job within the Jewish tradition, and still today, they're the ones that are taught, and they are to teach the women and the children within their home. Okay? So the men go get taught at the synagogue or at the temple back then, and then they would come home, and they were to train the women and the children, all right, that was there when it comes to teaching. So Jesus said, all right, and then he began with Moses and the prophets. So he's going back, right, to Moses. Moses, when did the Exodus occur? Was it during Moses' time? Yeah, he was the one that led them out, right? He led them out of Egypt. So he goes back to the time when the Hebrew people became the Israelites. And when they were taken and saved by God, all right? And when we know what happened relative to death in Moses' time and when the people were in Egypt. The first Passover, the Passover of death, when the angel went over and the firstborn of every animal and every human in Egypt was to die, and did, unless they had what over their door? Blood of the lamb or blood of a goat, and a perfect lamb or goat. So Jesus takes them all the way back to the Passover, which they just completed, right? They're on their way home from the celebration of the Passover. So he said, okay, let's go back to that time. And I'm sorry, take me back there, Dave. I missed the last part. All right, in the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning who? Himself. No begats in this. What did he talk about? He explained everything about himself. That's who he was talking about, all right? How Old Testament spoke about the Messiah and the coming Messiah and who it was. Go to the next one, if you would. As they approached the village, so what's the name of the village? Emmaus, okay. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus acted as if he were going on farther. Now, Jesus has taught them, spoke with them. He has become a friend. Because if I want to know about something really, really important, all right, something that's really important to me, and I think I know something, but here comes an expert, all right? Here comes an expert along who teaches me new things, helps me understand even better this topic that I care about, that I'm working with all that type of thing, all right? So he comes along and he takes care of that. Is that person now a friend? Are we going to listen to that person? Hello? Yeah, I hope so. If they've just helped, I got thinking about, we just had a quilt show. How many of you do quilts or crafts like that? Raise your hands. Okay. So a person comes up and you've been working with crafts, and I'll share this. Lonnie's not here, so I can talk about her. And she's been taking some online classes from, I can't tell you the name, this woman's name right now, it escapes me, although I've heard it many times. She is, quote, the world's fastest crocheter. I mean, I don't know if they have competitions or whatever, but she's very, very fast. And so she's one of Lonnie's teachers on these classes she's been taking relative to crocheting. Well, Lonnie came up with a new stitch. And she was amazed when she showed it to her and go, wow, I've never seen that before. Well, you've been teaching from the expert, and now you come up and you have an idea. So when you share ideas, here's a person that's an expert that's there, and yet we share and we learn. Jesus, who comes along to these men and is now being a friend, helping them to understand even better the things that they thought they knew. Okay, they thought they knew and understood, but he's teaching them new stuff. And if he's there, and we're walking along, and I'm walking with Jim along here, and I've been teaching him all this stuff, and he's just amazed. And I say, well, I got to get going. I can just see Jim going, whoa, buddy, we're not done with you yet. Okay, we got more to learn. We've been spending all our lives to learn this, to understand this and get it right. And you're teaching us now, and we got it. Don't go now. Come on. Spend some time with us. So it goes on. But they urged him how? Strongly. Like, no. Come with us. Okay? Urged him strongly. Stay with us, for it's nearly evening. The day is almost over. So what did he do? He went in with them. Did he want them to strongly urge? What was he doing? Yeah, he was baiting them. He was testing them. That's right. Do you really care? Do you really want to know? Or you just listen to me talk? I mean, he knew in his heart, right? Jesus knew. But he wanted them to know that we want to know more, okay? Teach us more along the way. So he went and stayed. And when he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Now, okay, we will celebrate today what special time here in this church? Holy Communion. That's correct. When was the first Holy Communion, as we look back in history, or the first Lord's Supper, when was that established? Yeah, Maundy Thursday, which is what we call it, but it was Passover and the Passover meal. But it was the Passover meal that Jesus did what to? Changed it. It had been done the same way for how long? 1,500 years. Done the same way. Jesus changed it. And he made it personal. About who? Himself. This is whose body? My body. This is my blood. Take and receive this. And remember whenever you do that. So Jesus breaks the bread, gives thanks, okay? Asked the Father thanks for this, broke it, and began to give it to them. So they are receiving it. What do you think happens? Go to the next verse. And their eyes were opened as they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. The eyes were open, this is what we call an aha moment. Oh man, we've been walking with Jesus. Now, do you think they really believed what had been just taught to them? Yeah, you betcha. It was now burned in stone, okay? It was laser cut into their hearts and minds at that time, because, we thought this was some great prophet or whatever, but this was Jesus that was walking with us. And we know that they were one of the first couple of people to see him after he was resurrected. We know Mary Magdalene was the first one, as it talks about later, okay? So these might have been the second, third people to see Jesus after he was raised. Let's go to the next verse. Now they ask each other, were not our hearts burning within us while they while they talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us? In other words, weren't we having a special time? I mean, wasn't this awesome when we were doing this? When you're sitting there, as you're walking along, you're not sitting there, but walking along, being taught about Jesus by Jesus. You can't be taught by anybody that knows it any better. So our hearts were burning. We didn't know why. We didn't understand. All right? And they got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. They were sauntering along as they were going to Emmaus. What do you think their trip was like on the way back to Jerusalem? Hello, we're booking, right? Did they have some good news to share with the apostles? There was a whole bunch of people that they knew that they'd heard the women talk about it, okay, but they hadn't seen for themselves. Now here's two other disciples that were going back to, disciples and apostles, to tell them, hey guys, we saw Jesus. We walked with Jesus for a whole afternoon, or most of a day. And he taught us, and now we understand what went on. Is that good stuff? Is that good stuff? Yes. Is it good stuff that you know that? Huh? I hope so. If Jesus came today, would you want to walk with him and listen? If Jesus came today, would you want to walk with him and listen? No? You'd want to teach? You want to tell Jesus what's going on? Or do you want to listen to what Jesus has to say? They were excited. They'd listen. Jesus had become a friend to them. He'd listened to them. And he shared with them and helped them get it right. And then he had opened their eyes that they might see that they were taught by the Master. This is awesome stuff to be able to share. Go ahead and hit the next one if you would. And saying, it is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon. In the next verse. Then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. What time of the day do you think it was when they decided to mosey on back to Jerusalem? Yeah, late. And a 7 miles to go in the dark, especially if there wasn't any moonlight out. And I'll tell you, that area over there is not blacktop roads. We're talking up and down, and they're stony and they're rough today, let alone back then. And so things were difficult, but I guarantee you they floated along. Because they were on such a high that they had to float along until they got back and shared what was there. And so it was all to them. And how did they know that it was Jesus? Because he shared the bread. In the breaking of the bread, Jesus told them, these apostles, that any time that you share, this is my body, this is my blood. Remember, they had just been given by Christ the body again. And now they knew. We have the same opportunity in Holy Communion, every time we celebrate, to come and receive the body and the blood of Christ. Come and receive his gift to us, to be just like those on the way to Emmaus, to receive that wonderful gift of second life, new life, the gift of eternal life. that comes from him. He died that we might live. He gave all that he had, his body, his blood. You lose your blood, you're kind of not anymore. And yet he gave all that he had so that we might have a shot at a second life, and a life that we can live with him and the Father in eternity, and a life that we can live today in the kingdom of God. Where is that kingdom of God? Right in here. Okay? Right in here. So we have that opportunity to live and to share and to be a part of the Christ. Today, you can receive the bounty of that gift. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for sharing with us this story of the men on the way to Emmaus. Help us to put ourselves in their place. And Lord, we think we know so much, and that, we've studied this and studied that, and we've read scriptures, and we're just so wise. But Lord, you and know us better than any other. Come this day as we receive your gift of the body and the blood. Come as we receive this and baptize us new, cleanse us anew, make us whole. By your stripes we are healed. Heal us, Lord. Heal us inside and out in our body, mind, and spirit, that we truly may be your disciples, and that we, each and every one of us, will rush out and run to tell others, it's true, it's real, Jesus is risen, he is the Messiah. Come and celebrate with me. My friends, celebrate with me. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.